I used to think love meant never letting someone feel alone. Even when you were the one being left behind, every single day. My name is Elise. I'm 37 years old. I work full-time as a dental hygienist in San Diego. My job is steady, my coworkers are kind, my life, from the outside, looks normal. Stable. But behind the beige walls of our suburban townhouse, I was slowly disappearing. My husband, Tyler, works in tech. Smart guy, charming when he wants to be. Everyone loved him. My parents used to say I was lucky to have him. My friends were jealous when we first got married. He had that smooth way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Except once the vows were done and the photos were posted, I started realizing I was the only one trying. I'd work 8 hours on my feet, come home with aching legs, and still cook dinner, not that he ever asked how my day was. Not once. He'd grunt from the couch, scrolling his phone. And if I didn't have dinner on time, oh, he'd say, I thought you said you were good at multitasking. He always said it with that half smile. Like a joke. Like I should just laugh it off. And I did. For a while. Because that's what we're taught, right? That a good wife keeps the peace. That if something's off, you fix yourself before you accuse your husband of being selfish. So I fixed myself. I woke up earlier to make his coffee. I folded his laundry just the way he liked. I memorized his work schedule. I picked up his dry cleaning, learned how to make his mother's lasagna from scratch, even bought new lingerie to spice things up. He didn't notice. Or worse, he noticed, but didn't care. He'd take the coffee without looking up. He'd eat the lasagna and forget to say thank you. He'd roll over and fall asleep after I tried to initiate intimacy, like I was the one doing too much. Needy. Clingy. I kept going. Kept hoping. That maybe, if I did just one more thing, he'd smile like he used to. Maybe he'd touch my hand at the dinner table. Maybe he'd look at me like he used to, like I mattered. But I didn't matter. Not anymore. The thing about being a giver is, people get used to it. They stop seeing it as love and start seeing it as duty. And Tyler. He had started treating me like I was a background app, running, supporting, always there, but never seen. I remember one night so vividly it still makes my throat burn. It was our anniversary, 5 years. I came home with a small cake, his favorite dinner, and even a framed photo of us from our honeymoon. I lit candles. I wore the red dress he once said made me unbearably beautiful. He didn't show up until nearly 10 p.m. No text. No call. When he walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch, makeup faded, candles burned out. Oh, he said, spotting the table. Is this something? My heart cracked a little, right then. It's our anniversary. He looked blank for a moment. Then shrugged. Work's been insane. You know that. He walked right past me into the kitchen and grabbed a beer. That was the night something shifted. Just a little. A quiet voice in me whispered. You'll never come first. Not even today. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Because somewhere inside me, a part still believed in the version of him that brought me daisies when I had a cold. The version that once danced with me barefoot in the kitchen at midnight. The man who used to say, "You're my home." I just couldn't see that version anymore. He was buried under emails and sarcasm and passive-aggressive sighs. And me? I was buried right next to him. I used to think the little things didn't matter. The unspoken birthdays. The unanswered texts. The forgotten thank yous. I told myself marriage isn't about fairy tales. It's about endurance. But endurance, is a slow way to bleed. It started with the plans he'd cancel. A dinner I reserved weeks in advance. He'd bail last minute, client dinner popped up. A weekend trip I mapped out. Something came up at work. Always something. Always more important. Sometimes, I'd go alone. Sometimes I'd cancel. Each time, a little part of me went with it. I remember when my aunt passed away. We weren't close, but it still hit hard. I came home from the funeral, mascara streaked, hands shaking, and Tyler was on the couch, laughing at some podcast, AirPods in, totally unaware. I stood in front of him for almost a minute before he looked up. Oh. Hey. Everything okay? Everything okay? I whispered, I just buried someone today. He blinked. Right. Sorry. Work's been draining. That was his answer to everything. And still, I stayed. Because love is patient, right? Love is kind. Love keeps trying, even when it's tired. But what they never tell you is, love without reciprocation becomes servitude. One night, we were lying in bed. I turned to him, half scared, half desperate, and said, Tyler, do you even like me anymore? He didn't turn. Just mumbled, why would you ask that? And I answered with silence. Because I didn't want to hear the truth. Because maybe, just maybe, I wasn't brave enough yet. But the truth has a way of peeling back layers, especially when you least expect it. It came one Friday night, after another exhausting day at work. I came home, my head pounding, and found him laughing on the phone in the kitchen. He didn't see me. He said her name. No, Ashley, you've always looked amazing. I don't care if it's been years. Ashley. His ex. My breath caught. My vision went narrow. I didn't barge in. I didn't make a scene. I just stood there, still in my scrubs, purse on my shoulder, and listened to the man I built a life with flirt with the woman he swore he was over. He hung up a minute later. When he finally saw me, he smiled like nothing happened. What's for dinner? What's for dinner? He had no idea what I just heard. And maybe he wouldn't have cared if he did. I cooked anyway. Chicken and rice. Because it's what he liked. Because it's what I did. But something inside me cracked. Not in a loud, dramatic way. No. More like a slow splinter in the center of my chest. The next morning, I got my period. Badly. Cramps. Dizziness. I could barely stand. Tyler saw me curled up on the bathroom floor, pale, shaking, and he stepped over me to brush his teeth. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't offer a word. He just hummed while rinsing, then said, "Don't forget we have to clean the garage later." That's when it really hit me. I wasn't just not a priority. I was inconvenient. And the worst part. I was starting to believe that was normal. But life has a cruel way of forcing you to see what you've been avoiding. That moment would come sooner than I thought. And it would come in a hospital bed. They say your body keeps the score. Mine did. The headaches, the fatigue, the shortness of breath, I ignored them all. I thought I was just tired. Just working too much. Just pushing through like I always did. But pushing through a brick wall only ends one way. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had 3 back-to-back patients and hadn't eaten since breakfast. I came home, collapsed on the couch, and the room started spinning. And then it went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was in the emergency room, white lights, IVs, nurses asking questions I couldn't quite answer. They said I had collapsed from a combination of exhaustion, dehydration, and internal inflammation. They admitted me overnight for observation. My phone was at 4%. I texted Tyler. I'm in the ER. Room 212. Please come. His reply came 20 minutes later. Seriously? Now? Then, silence. I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. At one point, I convinced myself he'd walk in with flowers. I even reached for the emergency button just to freshen my hair. Because I still wanted him to care. Still wanted him to see me. Instead, the nurse walked in. "Elise," she said, a little hesitant. "There's something you should see." She handed me my phone. I had just enough battery left to check notifications. He'd posted a story. Instagram. He was at a restaurant. Laughing. Champagne. Candles. The caption. "Happy birthday Ashley, party popper just like old times." I swear the room dropped 10 degrees. I stared at the screen for a long time, not blinking, not breathing. Ashley. His ex. The one he said was a chapter that closed years ago. He was with her. Not just texting. With. Celebrating. While I was in a hospital bed. Hooked to monitors. Barely able to sit up. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside me shattered in a way I knew was permanent. I spent the night alone. No flowers. No visitors. Just the beep of machines and the echo of his choice screaming through my bones. The next morning, I discharged myself early. The nurse tried to convince me to stay. But I had already stayed too long. Not in the hospital. In the marriage. I got home to find him asleep on the couch. Unbothered. Unmoved. As if nothing had happened. When he woke up, he rubbed his eyes and said, "You're home early." Early. I didn't answer. He asked what the doctor said. I said, "They said I need rest. And space." He laughed. "Good luck getting that in this house." Then he went back to his laptop. And that's when I made my decision. Not in a burst of rage. Not in tears. Just a quiet, deliberate promise to myself. I will leave this man. And he will never see it coming. Something changed in me after that night. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't cry. I went quiet, dangerously quiet. Tyler thought my silence meant forgiveness. But it wasn't forgiveness. It was preparation. I started watching him like a stranger. Not as a wife, but as a woman who was finally ready to stop hoping, and start seeing. And what I saw was ugly. He wasn't just neglectful. He was entitled. He acted like coming home to me was a favor. Like making his own coffee was beneath him. Like sex, when he wanted it, was owed, but love when I needed it was too much. I stopped trying. No more dinners from scratch. No more laundry folded just the way he liked. No more back rubs. No more soft kisses on the cheek when he came home late and reeked of cologne I didn't own. I started saying no. He noticed. But not in the way I expected. One night, he said, "You've been distant. Is it hormones or something?" Hormones. I smiled. That night, while he slept, I opened my laptop and typed one phrase that would change everything. How to leave a marriage without him seeing it coming. The next few weeks, I became a ghost with a clipboard. I met with a divorce attorney during my lunch breaks. Created a new bank account. Opened a P.O. box. Stored documents on a flash drive I kept in my bra drawer, the one he never touched. I pulled my credit report. Ran asset checks. Discreetly copied account passwords. Downloaded months of call logs. He had nothing to hide, and that made it easier. Because he assumed I would never leave. I played my part so well, I scared myself. I still packed his lunch, but with cheaper cuts of meat. I still folded his shirts, but sloppier. I smiled when he kissed me, but only with my mouth, never my eyes. He didn't notice. Because men like Tyler never see the woman. They only see the role. One afternoon, I pretended to be at yoga. Instead, I met with a realtor. The market was good. Our home had equity. I ran the numbers in my head while sipping tea in a stranger's office. The plan was falling into place. But there was one more thing I needed. Proof. Not of the cheating, I didn't care about Ashley anymore. That betrayal was already carved into my spine. No, I needed proof that he would never change. That my instincts weren't overreacting. So I tested him. I staged a panic attack. Not a dramatic one, just enough. I clutched my chest during dinner. Said I felt dizzy. That I needed him to drive me to urgent care. He looked up from his phone and said, "Do you think it can wait? The game's on." The game. That was all I needed. I stood up, walked to the sink, and whispered, "Thank you." He looked confused. For what? For being exactly who I feared you were. Tyler had no idea. He still kissed me on the forehead every morning like nothing had changed. Still left his dirty dishes in the sink. Still asked what was for dinner without ever asking how I was. But by then, I had already filed for divorce. In a different county. With a sealed motion. I told the attorney I wanted it clean. Swift. Irrevocable. He said, "You've already done all the hard parts. Most women wait until they've lost everything." I smiled, but there was no joy in it. Just clarity. Because I had lost everything. Everything that ever made me believe marriage was about partnership, protection, love. That was long gone. What was left was survival, and I was done surviving. I started moving small things out during work hours. One jewelry box. A few framed photos. Important documents hidden inside cereal boxes. Tyler never noticed. One afternoon, while he played video games with his headset on, I walked right past him holding my grandmother's urn. He didn't even look up. That was the moment I realized. I was already gone. Emotionally. Mentally. Spiritually. All I had left was the execution. I arranged everything, a temporary apartment, utilities under a new name, even a part-time telehealth job to help me transition out of the clinic once the storm broke. I set a date. Friday. 2 weeks out. Why Friday? Because he always worked late on Fridays. And I wanted to be gone before he realized what was missing. Me. Every night leading up to that date, I lay next to him, wide awake, listening to his breath. And I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. But the universe, as always, wasn't going to let me leave quietly. For days before the move, Tyler came home early. He looked off. Pale. Nervous. I braced for some kind of confession. Was he going to admit to the affair? Apologize? Beg? No. He sat me down, cleared his throat, and said, "Hey, so. I applied for a promotion. Big one. We'd probably have to move to Seattle. It'll be good for us." Us. He wanted to uproot me. Again. Without asking. Without noticing the way my eyes didn't light up. Without wondering if I'd even want to go. I nodded. I said, "That's exciting." He kissed my cheek and said, "I'm glad you're still in this with me." Still in this. I almost laughed. But instead, I hugged him, one arm around his back, one hand reaching for the ring on my finger. That night, while he slept, I placed the ring on the counter. Right next to the sink he never cleaned. No note. No words. Just silence, the same silence he'd given me for years. Friday came. I woke up at 5 a.m., just like always. I brewed his coffee. I packed his lunch. I folded his shirt, the blue one he liked for client meetings. I even set out his keys, right by the door. Routine. Familiar. Comfortable. He never questioned why I was being so attentive. He never asked. He left with a quick, "See you tonight." He didn't even notice I wasn't wearing my ring. The second the door shut, I moved. I didn't cry. I didn't pause. I executed. Boxes, already packed. Movers, pre-booked and waiting in a van down the street. Lease, signed. Bank account, secured. Divorce papers, already filed. By noon, the house was stripped of everything that mattered to me. I left the wedding album on the counter. And the ring. I placed it in the coffee mug he used every day, the one that said, "Best husband ever." By 2 p.m., I was gone. Gone from the house. Gone from the marriage. Gone from the woman who used to beg for scraps of affection. But it wasn't over. Because Tyler, he wasn't used to consequences. He came home to silence. To empty drawers. To an inbox flooded with legal documents. He called. Once. Twice. 27 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Where are you? Is this a joke? You're being dramatic. We can talk about this. Come back." But I didn't go back. Because I wasn't the same woman who stayed quiet in hospitals while he toasted another woman's birthday. I was something else now. I was free. A week passed. Then 2. He showed up at my new apartment one evening, in shock. Hair messy. Shirt untucked. Eyes confused, like a child lost in a grocery store. He said, "I didn't know you were unhappy." And I looked him in the eye, the man I gave years of my life to, and said, "You didn't know because you never asked." Then I closed the door. I thought that would be the end. But life, in its twisted humor, wasn't done with him yet. A month later, I got a call from my attorney. Apparently, Tyler's big promotion in Seattle. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a setup. Turns out, Ashley worked for the same company, and had a hand in recommending him. But it wasn't out of love. It was out of leverage. She was filing a harassment complaint, complete with screenshots of months of messages, DMs, and late-night photos. He wasn't just emotionally cheating. He was laying the groundwork for something darker. HR pulled the plug. Promotion, gone. Job, under investigation. Reputation, crumbling. And for the first time in our entire relationship, he was the one begging. But I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Not bitter. Not broken. Just done. People ask if I ever forgave him. The truth? I don't need to. Because forgiveness implies I'm still holding something. But I'm not. I've let it all go. The dinners. The dismissals. The birthdays he forgot. The hospital bed. The silence. The man who walked past my pain for years. I left it all behind. And now, I wake up in a quiet apartment with sunlight pouring through the window. I make coffee for one. I wear whatever shirt I want. And I've never felt more seen.